And so it is here, my friends. The Last of Us by HBO, Season 1, Episode 1. And let's just get into it because I've got some thoughts. Now, for those of you who don't know, The Last of Us is based on a video game by Naughty Dog, set in a post apocalyptic future where a fungal infection has taken over the minds and bodies of human beings and turned them into brainless zombies. The Last of Us is widely regarded as one of the greatest video games ever made, and I would echo that sentiment. Now, it's debatable about the second one, but that's neither here nor there. Basically, what we're talking about today here is HBO's rendition of The Last of Us. Episode 1 is our establishing episode. We get to meet our heroes, Joel Miller and Ellie Williams, and a few other characters such as Tess and Joel's daughter, Sarah. Quite a bit happens in this episode, and to be honest with you, the episode could have been cut down by, I'd say, probably 20 minutes. It clocks in at about an hour and 20 minutes, and I think an hour would have sufficed just fine. I'm not going to get into spoilers just yet. I'm going to kind of give you a little bit of a brief synopsis and then a overall rating for it, and then I'll kind of get into a little bit more of the intricate details of the episode. So being that this is episode 1, we get to meet our characters, we get to learn their motivations, and we get to learn the overall goal of where the story is going. Episode 1 does, for the most part, stick pretty true to the source material in surprising fashion, given the atrocities that we've seen of the last year alone, the attempts of adaptations that don't care about the source material. House of the Dragon included. Apparently, I haven't watched that one, but that's neither here nor there. A lot of that can be attributed to the fact that Neil Druckmann himself has basically taken the helm on this project. Now, say what you will about Neil Druckmann, but I'd say he cares about the accuracy to his own creations. So, one could expect it to at least sort of respect where it is it came from. Now, there were a few issues that I had with some story beats, some things that I felt were filler, and some casting decisions. But overall, episode 1 was highly watchable, entertaining, and it was able to keep my attention, believe it or not. Most things are not able to do that anymore. So that is an accomplishment in itself. In today's ADHD-ridden world, having something blow up on screen is tantamount to entertainment nowadays. But while this episode does have its share of explosions and action sequences, it has its quiet moments too, and those quiet moments do serve a purpose. They do feel substantial, and overall, I would give episode 1 of Season 1 of The Last of Us a 7.5 out of 10. Now, let's get into the good stuff. Now, first of all, I want to talk about casting. In our lead role, we have Pedro Pascal as Joel Miller. Overall, I believe that this is decent casting. He fits the bill. He fits Joel. He's got Joel's kind of brooding attitude. He's got his stature. Joel, as you know if you play the game, Joel is not a huge guy, but he's a big dude. And he is brooding, and he is stoic, and I believe that Pedro Pascal captures that very well. Next we have the first character that we meet on screen, Sarah Miller, played by Nico Parker. Now, outside of the obvious reasons why this casting might be questionable, she's decent. I think she does a good job overall in the episode. She captures Sarah's whimsy very well, although there are a few added elements to Sarah's character, which I found a bit off-putting. We'll get into those a little bit later. And then we come to Tommy, Joel's younger brother. I believe he's younger. Played by Gabriel Luna. Again, I'm not sure, the image. Tommy always struck me as sort of the gun-toting redneck. He was a blonde dude in The Last of Us, and now he is basically 100% Hispanic. Not that that's a huge issue, but when you first meet him, at least when I first met him, it was a little bit off-putting. I had no idea who I was looking at. And then we have Ellie, played by none other than Bella Ramsey of Game of Thrones fame. This casting is interesting to me. She plays Ellie really well, but she takes Ellie's attitude and dials it up from a 9 to a 10. Just that little bit of extra that makes her seem almost exaggerated in certain aspects. Now, as of right now, Bella Ramsey is 19 years old. I don't know what they're planning on doing, how they're planning on structuring season 1. I would assume, and I have heard, that season 1 is going to follow the entirety of the first game. Season 2 is going to follow the entirety of the second game. Now, if they're planning on keeping Bella Ramsey looks 14. And I'm curious as to how they're planning on aging her up for season 2, which is why, in my opinion, this is an interesting casting, because she looks old. She looks the part to play Ellie, but she almost looks too old to cast an older actor to play her in season 2. So we'll see how it goes. As of right now, I don't know. I'm not entirely sure how I feel about her casting just yet. And then we have Tess, everybody's favorite Tess, the only Tess that anybody knows, played by Anna Torv. This is the best casting that I've seen so far, honestly. I think she plays Tess very well. I like this version of Tess more than in the game, actually, believe it or don't. This Tess actually seems a little bit more, I don't know, believable. She was a little bit, there was a lot of cheese in her character in The Last of Us. Now, granted, I haven't played The Last of Us video game for a few years now. Definitely haven't played The Last of Us Part 1 remake, which was kind of a, I don't know, seemed completely unnecessary to me, but be that as it may, Tess in The Last of Us HBO series is a good character. There are some decisions that they've made with her character that have not been revealed yet that I've heard or could be the case, and that she's playing Tess in 5 out of the, I believe it's 9, or maybe, and 5 of the episodes, over half of the episodes coming to season 1. Now, if you remember from the game, Tess dies relatively early. I think probably within the first hour and a half, maybe 2 hours of gameplay. Neglecting, all deaths. If you're one of those people who dies all the time, like me, then it's probably going to be 4 or 5 hours of gameplay. But story-wise, probably 2 hours in, Tess is dead. I don't know why they've decided to keep her in this long, but we'll just have to see. And then we have Marlene. The interesting thing about her is that she is the only one, so far as I know, that actually plays the same character in the video game. Her job in the show is fine. She's all right. Nothing to write home about, but she does the job. So, yeah, there's that. So episode 1 starts off with a talk show from, I believe it's 1963, which is a departure from the video game. Interesting creative choice, where Big Head of Silicon Valley fame, if you haven't watched Silicon Valley, by the way, phenomenal show. Mike Judge is a genius. I highly recommend that you watch Silicon Valley, at least the first 4 seasons. Anyway, episode 1 begins with a talk show taking place in the 1960s where people are talking about the potential for deadly infections to kill the human race, to wipe out the human race. And it takes a very ominous turn when one of the scientists begins to mention fungi, especially the cordyceps. He never actually comes out and says the word cordyceps, but anybody who knows about anything about the cordyceps and the first game, that's basically what the fungus is that takes over the human race. And in this sequence, I've seen a lot of chatter online about, they're throwing in their climate change propaganda, because one of the scientists says that, yes, of course, it's not possible for fungus to live in any temperatures above, what was it, like 92 point something degrees. Anyway, I can't remember the exact measurement, but the fact of the matter is that he comes out and later says that, say the earth were to warm by a few degrees, that fungus could then adapt and begin to take hold of the human species. And people have been saying that, oh, this is just climate change propaganda, yada yada yada. You know what? Fine, you can have that opinion if you want. I didn't really see it that way. That seems like you're kind of you're stretching a little bit if you think that way. I mean, it didn't seem ham-fisted to me. Not really, anyway. It seemed it seemed like it fit. But regardless, I mean, that's basically all there is to it. It kind of takes an ominous turn whenever he starts to describe the fungus and how it would interact with human beings and what would happen, and the fact that humans would lose that quarrel with the fungus. And then cut to intro. Now, is it just me, or are all intros to all shows now made by the same two people nowadays? It's always sweeping camera angles with special effects and bright colors and patterns that make no sense really, just share a common theme with complex textures and things like that, and music playing behind it. Now, the only thing that I did like about the opening sequence was the music. I mean, the music is basically straight from the game, but honestly, the opening title could be for any show. That's really all I got to say about that. Relatively unremarkable. And so we reach the first sequence with Sarah. And honestly, this is the first 10 to 15 minutes that really just doesn't do it for me. It really knocks that episode down from a potential 9 all the way down to a 7.5. And I'll tell you why. This scene could have been reduced by 10 minutes. All we needed was for Sarah to more or less just wake up, give her dad the watch, and let things ensue from there. But no, we get that characterization of Ellie that she is almost taking care of Joel. Joel is sort of an absent father figure because he's so busy with work and things like that. She's making breakfast for him, and it strikes me as yet another instance that producers, writers, and filmmakers are emasculating and basically saying that men are good for nothing. Now, I understand that Joel is kind of the hero of the story, or anti-hero of the story, but be that as it may, he almost has no redeeming qualities in at least in the first 15 minutes of the episode. And so Ellie makes breakfast. Tommy comes in and tries to take some breakfast, complains that there's no pancakes, so on and so forth. And they shovel off to school and work. And meanwhile, we see the origins of the watch. This watch is a watch that was, I guess, broken for a long time in Joel's dresser. So Ellie goes up. Have I been saying Ellie this whole time? God damn it. Sarah goes up, gets in his drawers, takes the watch, and steals money from Joel to pay to have it fixed. I hated this. I absolutely hated this. This is context that did not need to be added to Sarah's character. It lessens the impact of Sarah giving Joel this watch. In fact, why not have a sequence, if you're going to include this, why not have a sequence where Ellie goes up to her room, empties out a shoebox in which she's been keeping her allowance, and shoves it in her backpack? Wouldn't that make that gift that much more endearing? But no, she steals money from Joel to get his own birthday present. I understand little kids don't make money, but that just rubbed me the wrong way. And I could make a joke about the casting choices and the fact that she stole money from him, but I'm not going to do that because that's mean. And I'm not a very big channel just yet, but I'd like to keep it, at least for now. So there's that. And over the next several minutes, we see Ellie. Damn it, I keep doing that. We see Sarah going to school, we see her going to the watch shop, and over the course of that time, we get small hints of the infection, the fungal infection, beginning to take hold. Yet again, I think that this is unnecessary. If you remember in the game, really the only indication that we get is Sarah wandering around the house, Joel storming in, and eventually shooting his neighbor, the one of the Cooper, I guess the patriarch of the Cooper family. That is probably the best way to introduce this infection because it's impactful, it is sudden, and it is terrifying. So, all these tiny little hints that we get throughout the entire first 10, 15 minutes of the episode make the actual infection that much less impactful, if that makes sense. Now, there was one shot that I did think was interesting. While the premise around it is hammy, this one shot I thought was particularly interesting, and it is the one where Sarah is removing a DVD from a shelf at their neighbor's house, and the old decrepit woman begins spazzing out, and you can kind of see her. She's blurred in the background, but you can kind of see her mouth is in her mouth is agape, and she's just twitching and stuff, and it's very difficult to see, but it effectively captures kind of this ominous feeling around what's happening to these people. But other than that, everything else I thought was completely unnecessary. Now, on the subject of the old woman, eventually we find that she is infected once Sarah wanders into their house after she finds the dog scratching at her door, tries to take him home, finds that this old woman has been infected. She's got to be, in her 90s, can't walk. And all of a sudden, she has killed the other two individuals who are living in the house with her, taking care of her. Now, my question is, and this is a question that I've had for a long time about zombies, is that if you have somebody who is handicapped, say they are crippled, they have no use of their legs, or they have very little muscle mass in their legs, and then all of a sudden they are leaping around, they are sprinting, trying to get after people to infect them, eat them, whatever. How does that make sense? Unless it's a nervous disorder in which the fungus takes over the role of the nervous system, but that doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, the whole thing just seems, it seems like it's a tropey way to introduce the infection and try to get a good scare out of the situation. And then we find Joel speeding up. Oh, by the way, Joel was gone from the house, trying to get Tommy out of jail. That was, I don't know why that was the case, why they decided to add that in there. I don't remember that being in the game. But I keep getting all the names mixed up. Tommy's in jail. Joel goes to bail him out. Sarah is at home by herself. Things ensue with the old lady, and Joel comes speeding up in Tommy's truck. No, it is not Tommy's truck. Joel comes speeding up in his truck and just clubs this old woman over the head with a wrench. I can't help but think, see, like I mentioned before, in the game, we see the Cooper, his neighbor, whatever his name is, Cooper, burst through their sliding glass door, and Joel shoots him. And I can't help but think that they didn't want to depict Joel as a gun owner. So they had him kill an old woman with a wrench. I don't know, that's just something that just now occurred to me. I watched the episode twice so far, and that's something that just now occurred to me. Because it seemed ham-fisted, it seemed cheesy, tropey, and completely unnecessary. And now, really, this is the only thing that makes sense to me as to why, instead of having him shoot somebody who is threatening him and his daughter, why does he have a wrench? I mean, I understand he's a construction worker. He's in construction. Maybe he's in concrete. I can't remember. Anyway, yeah, I just thought that was odd. And while I'm thinking about it, what are the casting directors, writers, directors, and all of them expecting us to think about Joel and Sarah's relationship. And by relationship, I mean biological relationship. Is Sarah his biological daughter? Or are we to assume that she's adopted? No mention is made of her mother at all. Like zero mention. So we don't know if Sarah's adopted, which she very well could be, or if she's his biological daughter who looks absolutely nothing like him and is a completely different color. Could have a black mom, perhaps. But again, that's not addressed. I don't know. As far as I know, this seems yet another instance where it is unnecessarily casting people who do not resemble the original character for the sake of doing so. But that's just, yet again, that's what I'm thinking right now. And this kind of stuff is not going to stop. It's not going to stop. They're going to keep doing it. Because, I mean, I'm willing to believe that a character, that Joel Miller, a Hispanic person, a Hispanic man in this iteration, has a daughter of that color. But tell me how. That's all I'm saying. Tell me how. I don't know. Mention the mother. Give me a name. Give me something. Show me a family photo. That's all I want. Because as of right now, if you don't do that, the only thing it seems like is that, once again, you are checking boxes. Now, with all that being said, this is where we actually get into the meat of the episode, the good part of the episode, the part of the episode from here on, I feel actually was very good, and it stuck very close to the game. Now, there's one sequence in there. It follows the game pretty well in that the camera's in the back seat of the pickup truck, following them while they're trying to drive down the highway. And there's actually a lot of shots that match like perfectly with the frame of the game. So I was very impressed with that. There was one sequence in the game, and this is after the truck crashes. So you get jackknifed or T-boned rather. I get those, whatever. You know what I mean. The truck gets T-boned. They're running around. Sarah's got a broken leg, and Joel is carrying her around. And you see a flaming car crash into a gas station, and the whole gas station goes up in flames. Just completely explodes. They decided to replace this with an airplane crashing into the street. And that's what crashes the pickup truck. And I question why, because that is wholly unbelievable. All it seemed like was just an expensive special effects shot to get a big explosion on screen, and maybe they just didn't have enough money to build a prop gas station and blow it up. I don't know. That part just kind of stuck out as an odd choice to add into the shot. And so we get into the scene which really sets us off into the mood and the tone of The Last of Us and gets us going throughout the game. Sarah's death scene. Now in the show, this scene I thought was handled very well. It was handled basically shot for shot, just like the way the game did it. The problem that I have with it is, it was not nearly as impactful as it was in the game. And I'll tell you the difference why. The difference between the game and the show, and why that scene was so impactful in the game, is because while it is sad to see his daughter die, obviously, the thing that made it really sad was Joel's reaction to it, and the gut reaction of us being the audience, getting the feeling that we having just played as Joel, him losing his daughter. Now the thing is, with the show, they tried to get us to attach to Sarah. And the thing is, she's not going to be in the show the rest of the time. At least so far as I know. Unless, they show flashbacks of her or something like that, which is possible. But regardless, They tried too hard to get us to attach to a character which we ultimately knew, those of us who have played the game, we ultimately knew she was going to die. That right there, we didn't get enough time with Joel. We didn't get to see from the point of view of Joel, and we couldn't identify with Joel and kind of conceive of the loss of his daughter. Really, the only person that we've really had a chance to attach to is Sarah. We didn't get enough time with her, and we knew she was going to die anyway, and her scene was just, while it was well acted, well done by everybody involved, it just didn't hit nearly as hard. Like, if I was to give it a sad rating, a frown rating, my frown rating for the game would be a 10. That one hits me fucking hard every time. It doesn't matter how many times I play the game, that hits me hard. And in the show, I was just like, oh, there's a 5 on the frown scale. And fast forward 20 years later. Is that right? 20? Look on the camera. No. Is that 20 years later? We fast forward 20 years later. And we get a shot of a little girl walking towards Boston. And ultimately, her whole role is to die so Joel can throw her in a fire pit, and we can see how Joel has basically lost his humanity thanks to all that has happened. So there is another 3 minutes that didn't necessarily need to be in there, but I guess it sort of did its job. And now we get to see what Joel has become. Now, it is consistent with the video game, although we didn't actually get to see it in the game, but he's a smuggler. He sells pills for ration cards, things along those lines. And I gotta tell you, I dig it. I think the way it's done is very good. We get introduced to Tess and Bobbert, as I will call this one. Now, the thing about the dynamic between Tess and Joel, in the game, I mean, they were, partners. I didn't get the feeling that one was the boss and one was, the underling. But in here, she comes out and says, and I don't know if maybe she's blowing smoke up Bobbert's ass, but she says that Joel answers to her. I don't know why. Because it seems to me, and while I know I've said that this is the the rest of the episode from here on out is the best portion of the episode and the portion that I think sticks best to the game itself, it seems to me like Joel doesn't really make any decisions on his own. He almost loses agency, even though he is the main character. He and Ellie are the main characters. And one thing I will add about Bobbert is that in here, he is a fucking pussy. I mean, come on. Are you expecting me to believe that the guy that they've got playing Robert here actually has any sort of authority over anyone? And furthermore, he's selling car batteries instead of guns. So some of these decisions that they made, and I understand why they changed the guns to car batteries, because Joel wants to go and find Tommy out somewhere. I think it's in is it Wisconsin or Wyoming? I can't remember. I've seen the episode twice, and a lot of these details still escape me. Anyway, but that just seems it was an unnecessary change, because it's almost as if they're giving Joel a reason other than his eventual bond with Ellie to keep going. Like, he's going out that way anyway, so she might as well come with him. Well, no, that doesn't do anything to solidify the bond between Joel and Ellie. In the game, I don't believe Joel even knows that Tommy's alive. And so the fact that they come across Tommy is kind of like a happy coincidence so far as I can remember. Like I said, I haven't played the game in a while, but the only motivation for Joel continuing with Ellie is his paternal bond with her that is now filled from the absence of Sarah. And so finally, we do get to meet Ellie. And as I said before, she kind of takes Ellie's attitude and dials it from a 9 to a 10. A lot of it is just, it's in character, but it's almost a caricature. Some of the things that she says doesn't actually seem like something an actual human would say. But regardless, she plays Ellie just fine. We do get to see the Fireflies sort of detaining her, finding out, 3 weeks in, is she infected? Is she not infected? Is she going to turn? Things like that. So we do get to see that, and I didn't think that was necessarily a bad addition. And so if I can back up a little bit, I kind of skimmed over this part. We find out that Tess is being interrogated by Bobbert, and we find out that he has sold the battery that Tess had initially purchased to someone else. And so this is our motivation for Tess and Joel to go out and look for Bobbert. And what they find, I'll fast forward through the rest of it just a little bit, and what they find is Bobbert in the Firefly hideout. Dead, because he tried to sell the battery again, and it was a bunk battery, and there was a big shootout, and everybody died, but we don't get that whole scene where Tess and Joel confront Bobbert about his malfeasance and get to show what actually a little bitch he is. Instead, he's just a bitch because he's scared that Joel's going to come after him. And then next time we see him, he's got a bullet in his head. So, yeah, that was he was a completely unimpactful. He goes from, he's just a plot device. So, that's all fine and dandy. But this is where Joel and Ellie first meet. And the contention is there, just like in the video game. And it's very well done. I like the animosity that they kind of have towards each other. Ellie views Joel as sort of a captor, and Joel views Ellie as a burden, and that comes through the acting very well. You can see the resentment that Joel has for her because this is sort of an unexpected burden that now all of a sudden he has to bear as he smuggles her outside of the walls of Boston to meet up with the rest of the Fireflies and hopefully get, I believe it's a vehicle along with, guns and things like that, so they can go out and he can look for Tommy. And so they make their way back to Joel's apartment, where we can finally see a little bit more of the dynamic that Joel and Ellie are going to have. We can see Joel's stoicism, his pessimism might be a word I would use to describe it. He's serious all the time, has no lightheartedness whatsoever. He feels like he's got the world on his shoulders right now. Or maybe it's just because he's empty. Now, the one thing that gets me about this is that they're already mentioning Bill and Frank. And we don't learn about Bill in the game until we actually come to his side of town. And then not only... And it's not until that section of the story is ended do we learn about Frank and get hints at Bill and Frank's relationship. But here, and my gut instinct tells me, is that they are going to play the role of Bill and Frank, the role of their relationship. They're going to play that up to the highest extent to make sure that the audience knows. We have to make sure that without a doubt, that they're boning. Anyway, sidebar over. And here we reach the final sequence of the episode where we see it is night. Joel, Tess, and Ellie are making their way out beyond the walls, and we get the shot of the two skyscrapers, one falling over and leaning on each other, and fade to black. And that concludes episode 1 of HBO's The Last of Us. Now, overall, like I said, I would give it a 7.5 out of 10. I talked, admittedly, a lot more about the problems that I had with the episode, but you will notice that I talked a lot more about the beginning. And I actually just went back and looked, and it turns out that it's about 40 minutes into the episode when Sarah finally dies. There's a lot of unnecessary characterization of a character which is not going to last throughout the show, and trying to build a dynamic with Joel and Sarah that we can look back and say, oh, that's similar to the way that Joel and Ellie interacted. I don't think that the important part of Ellie and Joel's relationship is that she's just like his daughter. It's that Joel had an emptiness in his life left by his daughter's passing, and that role is filled by Ellie regardless of what her personality is, what similarities she has to Sarah. And that, I mean, at least to me, maybe it's because I'm a male and I have those instincts, but that rings to me a lot more true than having Ellie be a clone of Sarah or vice versa. But anyway, that's my review of episode 1 of season 1 of HBO's The Last of Us. Let me know what you think. Drop a comment down below. Let me know. If you like this video, please go ahead and drop it a like. Subscribe if you want me to keep doing these kinds of things. And as always, don't forget to pick up something heavy. Peace.